In today's breaking news, a video is trending of a popular news host breaking down in laughter at Trump while interviewing a top-ranking congressman, and I have the moment, what set him off, and more for you next. To see all of our videos about Trump's mayhem and the mockery it inspires, please hit that subscribe button. I'll let Trump set up this report with his own words, along with a cameo of someone you might recognize who I dropped in for effect.
I can't think of anybody in history that should get the Nobel Prize more than me.
What the heck are you talking about?
So that was Trump signaling to the world what he wanted, and the actual recipient of the award delivered with the ultimate act of groveling/gifting. Think of it as a symbolic and empty participation trophy. Let's begin the cavalcade of mockery that ensued with former Republican strategist Ana Navarro invoking Obama's name in her Trump takedown over the oddness.
Somebody who is attacking his own citizens in the streets of his own country will never, ever, ever get close to the Nobel Peace Prize. So he's going to go to his deathbed with the Obama envy that he feels. The envy he feels for Barack Obama and John F. Kennedy. Like, I think he wants to be seen as kind of like that, mythical, iconic, presidential, historical figure that everybody admires, even if you disagreed with them. And, he's just never going to get there. I don't care what how many times he puts the name Trump in front of the Kennedy Center. I don't care how many times he destroys Jackie Kennedy's Rose Garden, or how many times, he puts a fake gold peace medal around his neck. He's never going to get to Barack Obama level or John F. Kennedy level. So it is what it is.
Next up is Jen Psaki, who managed to slip butthurt into her mockery monologue. Have a listen, and then I'll have the host who couldn't contain his laughter over Trump stumbling into a hole of glory of his own creation.
I don't know this. If there's one thing Donald Trump cannot stand, cannot accept, cannot bear to live with, it's his own failure. He hates losing. He hates failing so much that he can never bring himself to accept his own defeats. He behaves like a petulant toddler who cries and whines because some other kid got a trophy and he didn't. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic here, consider this. Today, the winner of the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize literally had to hand that prize over to our butthurt president in order to try and secure the future of her own country.
Maria, did you offer to President Trump your Nobel Peace Prize?
I presented the President of the United States the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize.
And it was not just some gesture that Machado came up with to flatter Trump. Trump has been incredibly vocal about the fact that he felt he deserved the Nobel Peace Prize last year. He's been hinting at the idea of taking the prize from Machado for weeks while refusing to endorse her as the potential next leader of Venezuela. And last week, two people close to the White House told the Washington Post that Trump was unwilling to support Machado because she accepted the prize. So there's that. And so now, Machado has re-gifted her Nobel Prize to Donald Trump.
Every step this administration has taken after the death of Renee Good has been to blame the residents of Minnesota, blame the leaders in Minnesota and in Minneapolis, and to excuse and to send a signal to its agents on the ground that they can act however they want to. I think there was a term used, that they had absolute immunity. That term doesn't exist in the law, and they don't have absolute immunity. But like you said, the cruelty, yes, it is the point. But I'd like to remind everyone watching, what were those law enforcement officers doing, eating and then arresting, these people working the restaurant? If that doesn't show a lack of urgency around their supposed mission, I don't know what else would, right? If you're really trying to execute an immigration enforcement action, you're not going to casually eat in a restaurant and then go and you approach your targets. This is just unheard of. This isn't immigration enforcement. It's not law enforcement. It's political intimidation. And I'm going to keep saying this. The president has weaponized the Department of Homeland Security and federal law enforcement to act as his own federal police force. If we don't name that for what it is, we'll keep falling into this trap of thinking that this is just an immigration issue. It's actually a constitutional issue about state police power versus federal police power. And there's not supposed to be this type of federal police power.
Can I just ask a question? I want to stay on that point for a second, Tim, because arrest them for what? Did they have a subpoena? Had they identified the workers in that restaurant as gang members or as as felons or as individuals who are engaged in other illegal activity in this country, maybe belonging to a gang. You sat your ass down at their restaurant and ate their food. And then you come back with what? Where were the warrants? When you looked at that server in the face, did you know, oh, there's a criminal, let me go check some database because I recognize them from some other investigation? This is it's not just the cruelty is the point. It is just the sheer insanity that they think the rest of us are deaf, dumb, and stupid to what they're doing. I just don't understand how that happens, Tim. I mean, I've listened to you, and just sort of just put the right finger on the pulse here about what this really is in this moment.
Well, it's political, right? Like, this is a political effort, and it's also performative, right? It's politics and it's performance. It's not public safety. That's not what they're doing. They're saying that they're here to go after the worst, and they barely even pay lip service to that anymore. If they wanted to, figure out a way to just go after the worst people that have committed crimes here, they do what you're saying. They'd go get a warrant, right? If they wanted to deport the most people, but with the least disruption to communities, right, where there was no performance in it, what they would do is they would go to the big donors, right? They would go to the owners of, construction companies and agricultural plants, and they'd say, sorry, we can't, we need to come look at your employment records and go that way. But they don't want to do that because they don't want to anger, big supporters of the president. Mm-hmm. So instead what they're doing is this, they're going into these neighborhoods, they're going into the communities, they're menacing people. They want to scare people, and they also want to escalate. This Tim Walz.
So tonight, a federal judge in Minnesota has blocked ICE, CBP, other federal agencies assisting them from impeding the free speech rights of protesters or using force against them unless they are interfering with enforcement activities. Now, it's always how they define that, but this is certainly good, big news from a ruling tonight. This was a lawsuit, of course, that was brought all the way back in December by 6 protesters on behalf of anyone who records, observes, and protests ICE's ongoing operations in Minnesota. The judge even said that ICE is not entitled to stop and search protesters in their cars solely because they are safely following ICE and other federal law enforcement at an appropriate distance. And again, we are still digesting this ruling. As I mentioned to Chris, it just came out. It's a whole lot of pages. We're looking through it. We're combing through it. But one thing is very clear. It is bad news for the Trump administration and good news for the people exercising their First Amendment rights in Minnesota. Which brings me to the other piece of breaking news we are following tonight. MSN reported that the Department of Justice has opened a federal criminal investigation into Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. And that, to state the freaking obvious, is no coincidence. I mean, these 2 elected officials have been the most outspoken and the most passionate voices about the horror ICE is wreaking on the city of Minneapolis. And because they are actual leaders, we've all been watching them, and not malicious man-children like the current occupant of the White House and his hateful posse of Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, Greg Bovino, I could go on, they have actually called for calm from the moment an ICE officer fatally shot Renee Nicole Good last week. I mean, both Mayor Frey and Governor Walz have consistently and repeatedly called for their residents not to take the bait, to protest, but do so peacefully, so as to not give the Trump administration justification to increase its already massive federal presence in the state. And as we've all watched residents in Minneapolis being pulled from their cars by ICE agents, school communities being terrorized, pepper spray raining down on protesters, the city of Minneapolis have largely been all the citizens that we've seen have largely been doing what the governor of their state and the mayor of their city has been asking them to do. I mean, peacefully supporting their neighbors who are being attacked and targeted by ICE. But somehow this new federal criminal investigation revolves around the allegation that Frey and Walz obstructed federal immigration enforcement. Now, just a couple of notes on that. Tonight, legal experts point out that the crime of impeding federal agents requires physical force,
capacity, and long-term system reliability. This discussion is not about specific companies, locations, or policies. Instead, it focuses on broad trends that influence how power systems expand and adapt in response to changing needs. Let's begin with the growing demand for electricity. Modern economies rely more heavily on electricity than ever before. Digital services, advanced manufacturing, automation, and electrified equipment have become central to daily operations across many industries. As a result, total power consumption continues to rise steadily. One of the most significant contributors to this increase is the expansion of large-scale computing facilities. These facilities require constant, reliable power to operate servers, cooling systems, and support infrastructure. Even small disruptions can have major consequences, which is why energy reliability is a top priority in their planning. Manufacturing is another major driver. New production facilities often rely on electrically powered systems for precision, efficiency, and scalability. As more processes shift from mechanical or manual methods to electric systems, demand increases further. Beyond industry, everyday life is also becoming more electrified. Transportation, heating, cooling, and household appliances increasingly depend on electricity. This broad shift adds cumulative pressure on existing power systems. Meeting this rising demand requires expanding generation capacity. However, increasing capacity is not simply a matter of deciding to build more facilities. It involves equipment availability, skilled labor, planning approvals, and long-term coordination. One key constraint is specialized equipment production. Large-scale power generation relies on complex machinery that takes time to manufacture. These components are highly engineered, require precision manufacturing, and often have long production timelines. When demand rises faster than production capacity, supply becomes constrained. This leads to competition among different users, including utilities, developers, and industrial operators, all seeking to secure limited equipment. Orders are often placed years in advance to ensure availability. Another important constraint is workforce capacity. Designing, building, and maintaining large energy facilities requires highly trained professionals. Engineers, technicians, construction teams, and inspectors all play essential roles. Workforce shortages can slow projects even when equipment is available. Training new workers takes time, and experience matters greatly in complex infrastructure projects. As demand grows, ensuring a sufficient skilled workforce becomes just as important as securing machinery. Planning and approval processes also influence timelines. Large infrastructure projects typically require extensive evaluation before construction begins. These processes are designed to ensure safety, reliability, and compatibility with surrounding systems. While necessary, these steps can be time-consuming. Delays in approvals can push project timelines back significantly, even when funding and equipment are ready. This adds another layer of complexity to capacity expansion. Together, these factors create a bottleneck effect. Demand rises quickly, but supply expands more gradually. This mismatch requires careful planning to avoid strain on existing systems. Organizations respond to these challenges in several ways. One approach is long-term forecasting. By projecting future demand years in advance, planners can place orders early, train workers proactively, and begin approval processes well ahead of construction. This forward planning reduces the risk of shortages later. Another approach is efficiency optimization. Improving how existing systems operate can free up capacity without new construction. Upgrades to controls, maintenance practices, and load management help extract more value from current infrastructure. Efficiency improvements are often faster to implement than new builds. They can provide near-term relief while longer-term projects are underway. Diversification is also important. Relying too heavily on a single type of equipment or facility increases vulnerability. A diversified mix of generation methods and locations improves resilience and flexibility. Resilience has become a central planning goal. Reliable power systems must handle fluctuations in demand, equipment outages, and unexpected disruptions. Building redundancy and flexibility into the system supports stability. Another key concept is prioritization. When supply is limited, planners must decide where new capacity is most urgently needed. Critical services, essential industries, and areas with the highest growth